Hello dear students, welcome back to online English classes. This is session number 5 and this is the final session of the lesson Japan and Brazil through a traveler's eye. Before we get into the lesson, let's have a small recap of what we have learned in the previous session. In the previous session, we started with the second excerpt of the lesson titled Traffic in Brazil. And this excerpt is chosen from George Mike's book How to Tango, where he talks about some of his experiences in South America. And we have understood that Brazil is one of the South American countries. And the author visited Brazil once and he narrated his experiences in Brazil. And we have also discussed about the importance of the title of the book How to Tango and how the title is borrowed from a famous idiomatic expression to tango and how it has been changed into the title of his book How to Tango. The author narrates his experiences while walking through the streets of Copacabana. Copacabana, the very name itself provokes images of beauty, sand and ocean. And it is the sector of the city Rio de Janeiro where the author narrates his experiences. And we have come across the place Copacabana Promenade. Copacabana Promenade is a famous place that refers to 4-kilometer long landscape of the mosaic sidewalk paving. And the author turns his attention towards the grave pavements in the streets of Copacabana. And it is created by setting black and white stones in a harmonic way. And the author compliments the people for their effort to decorate the pavements they walk on. Well, there is a change in the tone of his narration in the second paragraph where the author introduces us to the Brazilian attitude towards car driving. The author says, the same leisurely people decorating the pavements they walk on, when they get behind steering wheels, they transform themselves into reckless drivers, and he says no speed is fast enough for them. The author, having made comments on their time consciousness, their effort of decorating the pavements they walk on, in the second paragraph he says no speed is fast enough for them. That means he explains their reckless attitude towards car driving. Even if they drive with high speed, no speed is fast enough for them. And the author, having made comment on the time consciousness, having made comment about their contemplation during meditative and ambulatory exercises, the author in the second paragraph says, gaining a tenth of a second has become a matter of grave importance to all of them all the time. That means each and every second is very important to the Brazilians. They don't leave even a fraction of second in driving because each and every second they want to show their speed driving skills. So he says, gaining a tenth of a second has become a matter of grave importance to the people all the time. And we have seen motor cars are extremely expensive in Brazil. It is because the import duties for importing cars from other countries is very high. And we have seen the economy of South American countries is very poor, is not up to the mark when compared to North American countries. So most of the South American countries import vehicles, goods and other products from North American countries. When they import all these things, they have to pay a large amount of tax to the North American countries. So we should be very careful in observing, though the lifestyle of Brazilians is not up to the mark, you can still find an enormous number of cars in Brazil. The author sarcastically comments on the craze of people for buying cars. Owning cars or buying a new car has become a matter of high social status in Brazil. And the author says, the number of motor vehicles is growing by leaps and bounds. Here the author uses an idiomatic term called leaps and bounds in order to explain the rapid growth in the number of cars in Brazil. And he sarcastically says, the number of motor cars is growing by leaps and bounds, almost if the cars were distributed free of charge to all and sundry. It looks each and everyone own car for free of cost. So that is why the author says, though the standard of living in Brazil is very poor when compared to North American countries, you can still find an enormous number of cars. It is because of the people's attitude towards buying car. It is because of the belief that owning a car in Brazil is considered high social status. So the author says it is because of the rapid growth in the number of cars, the pedestrian's life is becoming hazardous every day. Well, in this session we will discuss about the three important points, and they are the competition between driver and pedestrian, the war between drivers, and traffic in Avenida Presidente Vargas. Here R is silent, we should pronounce it Vargas. Let us read and understand the text. It is not that drivers do not care about pedestrians. The trouble is that they do care about them. They are in fact on the lookout for them. As soon as a driver notices a pedestrian step off the pavement, he regards him as fair game. He takes aim and accelerates. The pedestrian has to jump, leap and run for dear life. He does not resent this in the least. Driver and pedestrian, hunter and prey smile amicably at each other. I win today, you will win tomorrow, fair enough. Here the author comments how reckless the people who drive motor cars are. According to George Marx, the drivers in Brazil appear to be so weird in their behavior. He describes their strange behavior in a sarcastic way. He explains how the pedestrian's life is becoming more hazardous every day because of the rapid growth in the number of motor cars, as well as it is because of the reckless attitude, or it is because of the people's attitude towards car driving. So the author sarcastically says, it is not that the drivers do not care about the pedestrians. The trouble is that they do care about them in a different way. And how it is different? The drivers in Brazil consider pedestrians very important. Not in terms of caring about their safety on the roads, but in terms of consider them as a fair game, as their target, for not any big reasons. So the drivers in fact always look out for the pedestrian. So that is how they do care about pedestrians. And do you know what they do? As soon as a driver notices a pedestrian step off the pavement, he regards him as his target, he regards him as fair game, he targets him, aims at him and accelerates and drive very fast and go very close to the person as if he hits him. That's going to be a disastrous experience for the pedestrian. So the pedestrian has to jump, leap and run for dear life. Here the author uses the word dear life. It is because life is so precious one and it is so costly. Once you lose it, you won't get it back. So it is because of the fear that the car would come and hit him and kill him, the pedestrian has to jump, leap and run to save his dear life. Here in these lines, the author tells the reader how reckless the people drive in Brazil and how they chase people as the hunter do while hunting an animal. He sarcastically compares driver and pedestrian as hunter and prey. Here hunter refers to driver and prey refers to pedestrian. As I already told you in my previous session, though the Brazilians have some strict traffic rules, the drivers who have reckless attitude towards car driving violates all these rules. The speed limit in Brazil is typically 30 km per hour in residential areas, 60 km per hour on main avenues and 80 to 110 km per hour on main highways. But the drivers violates all these rules. It is because of this crazy and reckless attitude of drivers, the life of pedestrians is becoming more hazardous every day. The pedestrian can never know when a motor car will come in a high speed and hit them. In the city of Rio de Janeiro, there has been a movement which encourages the pedestrians to make a sign from the sidewalks to ask the vehicles to stop so that the people can easily cross the roads. but it has become a rare habit among the pedestrians, since the people claim to be so shy to make such kind of signs. And there are other pedestrians who don't even know how to make signs and what kind of signs they have to make to ask the cars to stop. And even the drivers don't respect all these kinds of signs. So the disrespect between the driver and pedestrian has become a huge issue, and it also leads to number of accidents and deaths. But here, though the author calls driver and pedestrian as hunter and prey, he compliments both of them for their sensible and sweet temperament. So the pedestrians do not resent. Here resent means bitter indignation at having been treated unfairly, at having been treated very badly. So the pedestrian doesn't show any anger for being targeted by the drivers. So the author says driver, pedestrian, hunter and prey smile amicably. Here amicably means smile at each other in friendly manner. So there won't be any kind of shouting, hatredness and quarrel between the pedestrian and driver. In fact, they appear to be saying, I win today, you will win tomorrow. That means they appear to be saying, I was driving the car and you were my target, and I made you jump, leap and run to save your dear life, and I win today. But tomorrow you may be driving your car, and if you see people on the road, go and chase them like what I did for you. So tomorrow you will win. Fair enough. Well, this expression and attitude shows there won't be any kind of hatredness between the driver and pedestrian. Though there is lot of chaos, confusion and danger involved in it, all this ends with a smile. Just imagine what happens in India if a driver aims at a pedestrian and targets him and accelerates for no any other big reason. If he goes very close to him as if he hits him, what will happen? The things will escalate, and immediately people will gather and they shout at each other, both the pedestrian and the driver, and immediately police will be called and things will escalate to the next level. You can find an immediate hatredness between the driver and pedestrian here in India. But that is not the case in Brazil. Though the driver considers the pedestrian as a fair game, those he targets him, those he accelerates and go very close to him as if he hits him, there won't be any kind of shouting. So at the end, they smile amicably. That means they smile at each other in a friendly manner. Well, in the next paragraph, the author talks about the war between the drivers. The competition or war between the pedestrian and driver is itself murderous. But this war between drivers looks even more murderous and very cruel. So the author says, the war between drivers themselves is murderous but good tempered. They cut in, they overtake on both sides, they force you to brake violently and commit all the most heinous crimes of the road and 20 times every hour. But they smile at you the same time. There is no anger, no hostility and mad hooting. Here, though the author says the war between drivers is murderous, he also says it is good tempered. So he compliments both the drivers for their friendly manner here as well. The reckless driving between the drivers do not create any shouting, any hatredness between them. So the author says the war is also good tempered. So the drivers commit all the heinous, hateful, wicked crimes which is against the traffic law in Brazil. So how they violate all these traffic rules? First thing, they cut in. That means without giving any signals or showing any signs, they immediately turn their cars into any directions. Well, this situation will put other car drivers into a confusing state, and which is against the traffic law in Brazil. So the second point here is they overtake on both sides. According to the traffic law, you should not supposed to overtake the car, especially when the road is very small, and especially when you see the signboard, do not overtake. And even if you want to overtake the other car, and you should horn and ask the way to overtake the vehicle. But the problem here in Brazil, the car drivers, they overtake on both sides, and it will lead into even more dangerous situations and even more confusing state. Well, in India, we drive in left side of the road, but in Brazil, they drive right side of the road. But the drivers don't care about all these traffic laws, and they always look for violating the rules. And this will also create a kind of chaos between the other drivers. So the third point is, the drivers force other drivers on the road to commit all the most heinous crimes on the road. So they will force other drivers to break all the traffic laws, and they force them to commit all the most heinous crimes of the road, and 20 times every hour. Some of the Brazilian cities are worst examples in this respect. Several traffic violation cases will be reported every hour in main cities, especially in the city of Rio de Janeiro. But though the drivers commit all these crimes and they involve all the other drivers into this crime, and though the drivers cut in without giving any signals, though they overtake from both sides, this war between the drivers looks good tempered. There won't be any kind of hatredness. There won't be kind of any shouting between the drivers. There won't be any kind of anger. No hostility. Here hostility means enmity. There won't be any kind of enmity between the drivers, and there won't be any kind of mad hooting. Here mad hooting refers to car horn. They don't unnecessarily honk the car just because other drivers overtake from both sides and just because they cut in without giving any signals. So there won't be any kind of mad hooting. So here hooting refers to car horn. They don't unnecessarily honk just because the drivers overtake from both sides, just because they cut in immediately without giving any signals, but all these things will end with a smile. Let us move on to the next and last paragraph. In the next paragraph, the author recalls an incident which he had witnessed in a place called Avenida Presidente, Vargas. So Avenida Presidente Vargas is one of the main throughways in the city of Rio de Janeiro. The road is designed by Getulio Vargas, and the city is named after him. So it is designed by Getulio Vargas, who was the president of Brazil at the time, while the city of Rio de Janeiro was still the nation's federal capital. The avenue connects the region's main towns, and the road is about 3.5 kilometers long, and it runs alongside several major landmarks in the city, including the Central Brazil train station. So the author says, the Avenida Presidente Vargas is the worst place of all. You stand there trying to cross the road and contemplating the truly fascinating problem. How can crawling traffic proceed at such terrifying speed? Here the author says the Avenida Presidente Vargas is the worst place in Brazil known for its crowded and slow moving traffic. Well, here you can observe his paradoxical statement. In the beginning he says the drivers are reckless, they drive cars very fast, and no speed is fast enough for them. Gaining a tenth of a second has become a matter of grave importance to the people. But here he says traffic in the Avenida Presidente Vargas is crawling. Here crawling means moving with a slow speed. He says even the onlookers or the people on the road will be truly contemplating the fascinating problem, and they may feel, how can crawling traffic proceed at such terrifying speed? Here the author uses the word terrifying not to show the high speed, in order to show how slow it is. So here terrifying speed means very slow movement. So the onlooker, people on the road, will think that how can crawling traffic proceed at such terrifying speed? One can imagine the number of vehicles moving at such terrifying speed, and probably it is because of the large number of vehicles moving at a time together which makes the reader calls it crawling traffic. Then he says, as hour after hour passes without a ray of hope of an auspicious crossing, you may witness a scene something like this. A man on your side of the Avenida Vargas suddenly catches a sight of a friend of his on the other side and starts waving to him. At the same time, looking completely mystified. How on earth did you get over there? He shouts across and trying to make himself heard above the traffic. It is the other fellow's turn to be surprised by this naive question. He yells back, how? I was born on this side. So here the author comments about the helplessness of pedestrian who wishes to cross the road waiting for long hours. And the author uses the word, it's an auspicious time. For the pedestrian, it is an auspicious hour, it is an auspicious time, because he would be fascinating looking at the huge traffic on the road, and he will be surprised by looking at the number of vehicles, and it shows his helplessness to cross the road just because of these huge number of cars. And he comments about the helplessness of the pedestrian who wishes to cross the road waiting for hours on end. Then he concludes his observation on Presidente, Avenida, Vargas, narrating a jovial anecdote. He tells that you might witness a scene in which a man standing beside you on your side of the road suddenly discovers a friend of his who is standing on the other side of the road. So in the middle you can see the crawling traffic of vehicles. So the person who is standing next to you on your side of the road will find his friend who is standing on the other side of the road and starts waving at him. And the person asks his friend sarcastically, how on earth did you get over there? He says it in a very sarcastic way. That means it is impossible to cross the road. He is replying to his friend's naive question, his friend's very innocent question, that he also knows that it is impossible to cross the road when you have so many number of cars moving at a low speed, that the author calls crawling traffic. So though his friend know about it, he still asks him, how did you get over there? And the person who is standing on the other side of the road yells back, shouts back and saying that, how? I was born on this side. That means I never crossed the road because I was born on this side. So when he says I was born on this side, that means he is saying it in a very sarcastic way. He wants to highlight the huge traffic in front of him and says that it is impossible to cross the road, and that is why he says I was born on this side. Well, one thing you should observe here, the author narrates this anecdote probably to convince the reader how difficult it is to cross the busy road in Avenida Presidente, Vargas. So the author gives his humorous comments on the traffic in Avenida Presidente Vargas, and he creates a humorous situation by giving example of friends try to communicate each other just to picturize how difficult it is to cross the road in the place called Avenida Presidente Vargas. So with this we have completed the second excerpt of the lesson titled Traffic in Brazil, and we have also completed the lesson titled Japan and Brazil through a traveler's eye. So before ending my session, I have a few important questions for you to check your understanding. And the questions are, who do the Brazilians look out for when they are driving? Question number 2, what is hazardous for pedestrian in Brazil? Question number 3, which is the worst place of all for crossing road in Brazil according to George Mikes? Write answers to these questions and send it back to us through WhatsApp. Thank you.